Good evening and welcome to EduVue on the EdReach Network with show number 31 in our second season. We feature a panel of experts with a purpose to professionally and critically discuss and assess the current trends and topics in education and technology.
Tonight, our regular panelists, we are joined by the one and only author of Digital Leadership, Eric Sheninger. And if you don't know Eric is the award-winning principal at New Milford High School. It is located in Bergen County. I hope I'm saying Bergen County correct, New Jersey. His work focuses on leading and learning in the digital age as a model for moving schools and districts forward.
Before we welcome Eric, we want to remind you that you can find EduVue on YouTube, iTunes, and the EdReach Network, where all of our shows are available. We'd love to be a more frequent presence in your ear, especially if you can't make our live shows.
And EduVue loves our back channels on Google Plus and Twitter at #EduVue. Please send in your questions or comments about standards-based grading, and for Eric and the panelists using the back channels and the Q&A feature on the Google Plus event page, and we're going to change that. Everyone hold, please. Questions or comments about digital leadership.
My apologies.
No worries, no worries.
I should have just went like this.
Totally should have.
Here. Okay, so losing the flow. So sorry, friends. When you copy a Google document, be sure to make sure you've made all of the changes you intend to use. Anyway, Eric, thank you so much for being here to talk to us about digital leadership. Please take a moment to introduce yourself. Who are you? We know you're a principal. Where in New Jersey, of course, and tell us a little bit about your role.
Well, let me try to say what's not been said. I've been the principal at New Milford High School for 7 years. So I've been in the New Milford district for 10. The New Milford community is very small. The town is 2 square miles. In that 2 square miles, there's 1 high school, 1 middle, and 2 elementary. We're a blue-collar community, which means we don't have money. We're very diverse. We speak over 40 different languages. And my building is very, very old. It was built in 1928. So I've been fortunate to work in New Milford, 650 kids, so it's small. And we're just very fortunate that we have a culture in the district that supports a growth mindset and gives us sort of unprecedented autonomy to do what we feel is best for kids.
That's awesome. It sounds a lot, minus the languages, like the small town that I'm from in Maine. 1 high school, 1 middle school, 2 elementaries, working class. So I'm interested to hear more about your story.
Well, you know, my story is interesting because the man I am here today is not the person I was a few years ago. I was the poster child for no technology, controlling environments, not trusting kids, and you know, I really worked very hard to create an environment that students had to conform to, and I really didn't feel that technology, as we now know it in terms of social media, student devices, had a role in the teaching and learning environment. You know, that was prior to 2009, but obviously I had an epiphany, aha moment, the light bulb went on, whatever you want to call it. And thankfully for my school, my students, and me, things changed. And that catalyst for change was that little blue bird that started talking in my ear. And once I got on Twitter, after swearing I would never be on social media ever.
Oh, funny.
It just changed everything, you know. And you know, we all have that, you know, moment in time where we need a new sense of direction. We need to find ourselves. And for me, it was becoming educated on the true value and role that technology could play in every facet of how I lead and every facet of what we do with kids. And once I just started taking control of my learning and I became educated, I really was able to suppress the fears, push aside the misconceptions, and be a type of leader to create a school that works well for kids as opposed to one that works just well for the adults.
Fantastic.
Amen. It is all about the students.
Amen. I know I had a meeting today. Eric, we have a new director of technology here in my district, and we met today, and it was so refreshing to hear her say just that, because she wants to give choices to administrators on what they want to bring into their buildings. Instead of saying, this is what you get, this is the only thing you get, she's offering choices, and she said because after all, they know their students best. So.
Yeah, and that's a real tenet of effective leadership in my mind, is being able not to micromanage, take a step back, and trust those people that work with you, not for you, but work with you, and have the sort of institutional knowledge and the hands-on experience of, the student body, the staff needs, and things like that. And if leaders give that type of autonomy and trust, they're the ones that ultimately are going to benefit when change starts to take hold, leading to cultural transformation that just makes everybody look great.
Well, you recently, obviously, you have more than one book, but most recently, Digital Leadership has been a very, very popular book. I know that when I first got it, I started talking with Allison Peterson and Dave Guyman, and we started a small Voxer book chat on digital leadership. And, we didn't hit the DigiLead hashtag with that by any means, but then towards the end, Allison had posted it there, and then all of a sudden, within like a day, there's like 8 people who want to join our Voxer book chat. And it was this, I think that's when I realized how much momentum you have, with the people who are reading your book, the people who are immersed in not just reading it, but literally discussing it and evaluating it. And I know it's been, it's a lot of people that know you personally. I know Brad Curry, you jumped in on our Voxer book chat. And so it's people that know you personally, but it's also people that just know you as, your Twitter profile, or you as an author. So what have you really thought about this whole push with your book? How has this changed your perception? And did you think there was going to be this kind of momentum around it?
Absolutely not. I'm a little fish in this big ocean, and for me, I think it's more the topic and the concepts that are presented as opposed to me. And I think it's just something that many of us are so passionate about, and I think a lot of the momentum really has been driven by our innate desire to truly create a better system of education that will prepare students for success in whatever career or college that they choose. So I think that it's more that we know things need to change, we want things to change, and if we can share our voices, put our minds together, and hopefully persuade others. And lately I've been learning a lot about the power of persuasion from my buddy Dan Pink, who just came out with a new book. I think that digital leadership really is about persuading the naysayers, those with their heads perpetually buried in the sand, that have every excuse in the book for not embracing and moving forward. I think that's why people are really driving the discussions around digital leadership, because we all have that shared interest, and we really know where our schools need to be. Because quite frankly, we're the ones working with our kids. We see them every day. We see how the stifling environments, the emphasis on standardized testing, the antiquated means to communicate, to share our story, all of that, the inability or inhibition to not learn out in the open, connect in a connected fashion. We see the merits of doing the opposite. And I think that's, to me, is the most satisfying piece. It's a catalyst for conversation, and hopefully that conversation will lead to more change with schools and various leaders.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. It's just such a great thing to know that the one educator listed on Time's 140 people to follow on Twitter is you, someone who just speaks exactly what we're all thinking.
Yeah, well, the social media world never ceases to amaze me, and you know, I think that I'm no different than anyone else. I just share a lot. Maybe I've been sharing sooner, but I really feel that the message that we say, if enough people are saying it in concert, we really have the capacity to change the system. And you look at all the things that are sort of evolving due to digital leadership. EdCamp US DOE is happening this week. You're seeing the EdCamp movement in general. You're seeing those educators coming out of obscurity to write books. They're being pursued to write books. Practitioners are now being given, I don't want to say equal, but more of an opportunity to present at national conferences. Our ideas are finally starting to be valued, when for the longest time we were just stepped on, we were pushed aside. And that really is the amplified voice that I feel is one of the central tenets of digital leadership.
So, Eric, tell me how, for those administrators that just, they want to, but they can't quite step into it, or they don't know how to step into this digital leadership role, how is it that you can advise them, besides maybe signing up for a Twitter account? Even if they do that and they're still unsure, what kind of advice do you have for those people?
Let's see. I'm gonna give the non-obnoxious answer first.
Go for it.
I'll give the obnoxious answer. It really is. It's truly about intrinsically finding the value themselves. I think the real game changer is once they experience the power of becoming connected, and they ultimately discover the value for themselves. We can push, we can prod, we can direct, we can mandate. None of those are effective as if someone truly discovers in a self-directed fashion the value and the experience, and so by the experience they find the value themselves. And I think a lot of it is giving them the resources to show them what a connected learning experience looks like. What I love to do when I speak to administrators is I show them numerous CBS news clips, New York City CBS, of all the different positive news stories on innovation they've covered, and I tell them point blank, this could be all of your reality. The only difference is I choose to tell our story with social media tools so that everyone knows what we're doing. No one asks me to do it. I do it because I see the value. And that's why CBS comes to my school. That's why we're on the cover of Scholastic. We're here. We're there. This is why we're getting free stuff, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of free stuff. So I try to tell those stories and make them feel really guilty because, again, it's there for everyone. And then my obnoxious answer, well, they can just go and get this. But,
they should.
even the book, the book is not written from a traditional standpoint. It really is a collection of stories of a variety of digital leaders that have embraced a bold vision for change. They're working collaboratively. They're taking risks. They're not fearing failure. They're integrating tools, whether or not they work. They're having students and staff be part of the change process. And you know what? No one needs to start like I did, where I was in the dark. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea what I was doing. So, I hope my book and many of the books that will follow will provide that support for those unconnected educators to get started. And, I think that's right now where I see the most value in my book going forward is to sort of be that spark to get others on board.
Yeah, I think that risk-taking is very hard for administrators and teachers at the same time. Just taking the risk to put themselves out there is something that's traditionally not been the role of a teacher or administrator, and it's hard for them to make that leap in their mind. So any stories that will push them in that direction or ignite that spark are fantastic.
Yeah, and I think one of the most powerful attributes of being a digital leader is that you ultimately have to become the storyteller in chief. Because if you don't tell your story, someone else will. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know about all of you, but I'm so sick of the negative rhetoric about how we stink, how we can't do our jobs well, we're failing our kids.
Amen.
When we all know that that's the furthest thing from the truth. Yep. But you want to know something? If we keep doing things the same way we've been doing them for the past 100 years, if we keep using snail mail, death by memo, email, all those traditional ways to get our message out, we're selling ourselves short and we're not meeting our stakeholders where they are at. And, it's so simple to connect and share our stories with social media tools. It just has to be, again, that growth mindset. We have too many fixed mindsets. Every leader, educator should read the work of Carol Dweck.
Amen.
And,
thank you.
We really need to move away from that fixed mindset because it's the fixed mindset that's destroying our education system.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be digital leadership, a lack of digital leadership, or even the continuation of creating testing factories with our students. We're so fixated on the conformity of education as opposed to, again, creating a messy system that inevitably will be more successful because the world is messy. And our kids deserve a messy education where things don't always go to plan, where they're allowed to do things that normal adolescents can do anywhere else but in school.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, last spring I was in one of my EDS classes, and I had this discussion, a little heated discussion, with a classmate who had said he wanted, they were just looking for buy-in into this instructional technology world, and I pushed back a little bit and said, I think you want them to embrace this idea. I think you want them to, to jump into this and feel this and be immersed in understanding how this makes great change. And so I'm reading your book, and you are like putting it down, and you are like, there's a difference between buying in and embracing a model. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna tell this dude just to read the book because he was adamant to me that there was no difference in these two terms. That these were okay. Merriam-Webster will tell you there's a difference in the terms. I don't have to tell you that. But he was adamant that buy-in is the same thing as embracing, and that I was just trying to push rhetoric that would push my ideas. And I was like, no. So when I read it in your book, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Someone's got to read it.
We shouldn't have to sell a better way to do things. Buy-in implies that you are trying to convince, persuade, sell people to do something. It's usually laden with extrinsic rewards, if-then carrots and sticks approach, from just like Dan Pink talks about in Drive. Embracement is you truly see the value. You're given the autonomy. You're empowered to make choices. You change professional practice that ultimately will have a better impact on what you're doing in the classroom, what you're doing in schools, and your districts. There is a huge difference. But again, fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset look at it as the same way. You're trying to get people to do the same thing. Well, you know what? When you try to sell people and get buy-in, is that going to lead to sustainable change? No, because if they don't truly believe in what the change embodies, it's not going to stick. And that's why we see so many fads, so many change initiatives that, this too shall pass. Come on. And again, I can only speak from experience, being that we don't have any mandates or directives to use technology at New Milford High School, yet virtually almost every teacher is using technology on a routine basis when appropriate. I think the results speak for itself.
I like that you said when appropriate.
I think it's just so funny.
Sorry, Kat.
That's okay. I was just saying, I think it's so funny that here we are, we're talking about, people buying into change for the betterment of our profession and so forth. And I recently was working on some of my doctoral work, and we were talking about Horace Mann. And in 1841, he published something called the Fourth Annual Report to the Department of Education at the time, talking about how teachers have to make themselves more professional, have moral standards to make themselves more visible. Like, there was a bunch of things that I really related to, thinking, considering how now kind of translated that to digital age, it's just like all over again. Just 170 some odd years later, it's repeating itself all over again, but in a different fashion. So I think it's humorous that we're talking about something similar.
Eric, I have a question too, if I may. Talking about going from that fixed mindset to a growth mindset. I'm as a district leader, I find that all the time, and I get this pushback from principals that don't want to embrace new technologies, or that aren't necessarily really stopping and thinking about what's best for their students and meeting their students in the best place possible. And I'm constantly fighting this battle of just being very diplomatic, but then again saying, do you have any idea how far behind you are? Do you have any advice for a district leader?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just shove in their faces. Look at what school A, B, C, and D are doing.
Amen.
Look at the environment that they're creating. Look at the results of that environment change. We are blessed today with example after example. But you want to know something? The best asset you have is your students. Compel your students to become the drivers of change, because you want to know something? You want to build a successful school culture, students need to take ownership. And if they take ownership of the learning, I'm telling you right now, my students are now in the driver's seat. They demand a different type of learning environment, and they have teachers that delivered it, and then they go to others and they're just bored, they're disconnected. In my school, you don't want to be that teacher that's not authentically engaging students in meaningful ways, where they're afforded the opportunity to pick the tool of their choice to create artifacts of learning to demonstrate conceptual mastery. If the students cannot guilt your principals or compel them to want to change, then guess what? Those leaders really should not be in the profession, because it's not about them. It's not about me. It's not about you. I can't point at all of you. It's not about any of you. But it's about our kids.
Yeah.
And we need to frame our thought process and our decisions as to, all right, I believe this, but you want to know something? Maybe I'm wrong. So it really is a combination of efforts, but besides taking a big sledgehammer and hitting them over the head, it really is sort of leading them to water, and hopefully they're going to drink it. And that's what we did. I was drinking the Kool-Aid all by myself. I literally was drunk on Kool-Aid, and I got a couple teachers, and we started drinking it together. Now it's like we can't keep the Kool-Aid full, because that's sort of the type of change. But it's like this too. I tell leaders, at a small school, I do the budget, I do the master schedule, I do observations, I do evaluations, I go to events, I do it all. Yet I can find the time, and it's had such a dramatic impact on our culture. It's totally flipped our culture upside down. Why wouldn't other leaders want that?
Yeah.
And it comes back to the reluctance to give up control and fear of what kids might do if they're trusted with greater responsibility. You just got to keep plugging away.
So, Eric, hi, I'm Stacia. I have a question. I wanted to get some of the details of the logistics of your school. Will you tell us a little about the demographics and the resources that you have? I was really compelled by the fact that you said you're from a working class community, so part of that is leading up to the question of what was the buy-in for your parents, and was there any pushback from them as well as maybe the teachers?
Well, I'll go back to something before. There was no buy-in, because I don't believe in that. I just tried to get them to embrace what we're doing. And some of the biggest battles I've had with my parents is they want to be taught. They want their kids to be taught the same way they were taught. So when in terms of resources and stuff, I mean, we don't have many. My operating budget for the high school is about $80,000 for everything.
Wow.
You know, we have a growing ELL population. We're about 15-20% free reduced lunch. Our building is very old. I mean, very old. So infrastructure challenges abound, but we make it work. And you know, we stretch every dollar. We make very wise investments. We don't, you know, we're a bring your own device school. We don't have the money to go one-to-one. Do all my kids have a device? Nope. We make it work. It's in the book. Well, I shouldn't say that. I always tell myself, I've been told before, don't say it's in the book. Just remind me of that. So, you know, we don't have interactive whiteboards in every room. We have good technology because we form partnerships and we get it for free, or we, you know, stretch our dollar and make. Now we're doing all these purchases, but you know, for us and the parents, you know, as we began to tell our story more and more, and students began to demonstrate learning in different ways that were not traditional, you know, we had to do programs for our parents, you know, face-to-face trainings, information nights at like back to school night. We created our own native app. We have Facebook, Twitter, all these social media tools to connect with our parents. So we're shoving information at them every which direction. And sometimes I have to explain to them why the learning environment looks different. You know, I don't have too many negative conversations with parents, but when I do, a lot of it is because they want direct instruction. They want notes the whole period. They want a traditional test. And I'll tell you right now, it's easy for me to have those battles because, you know, I'd rather see students construct roller coasters from scratch using the information that they researched on their own devices, creating it, taking notes on their devices, all this stuff, and they demonstrate learning that way as opposed to just taking a traditional test. So it really is a great deal about outreach because the environment looks dramatically different than what they were used to.
Well, it's funny that you say that because Vicki Day, she's a big fan of your That's the Way We've Always Done It section of the book. She even actually wrote a little blog to her staff, I believe, centered around that section of your book. And it's funny because when we've talked about it in our Voxer book chat, we've talked about it mostly in relation to, you know, your faculty and the staff of the school. But you bring up a really good point that it's not just the faculty. You have general stakeholders in terms of, you know, your community members, your parents, who are also operating under that mindset of that's the way it's always been done. Why is it happening different? So I think that's a whole new spin on, and maybe even the way we had approached looking at that part of the book. Because it is a huge stakeholders group that's really seeing it this way.
Well, yeah. Oh, sorry, Eric. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I got nothing. I'm good.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, speaking of stakeholders, there have been organizations that I'm familiar with in the past that have leaders who are digital. They have social media. They do all these things. But they're so obsessed about what the stakeholders are thinking that they hold back or they won't participate in certain things. They're just kind of, it's like a farce of sorts. How could you empower those leaders to have those battles like you do, like to be brave enough to, you know, explain things and say that's just how it's going to be?
I think, again, it really comes down to why we do what we do. We do not work for parents. We work for kids. And we need to remember that because that we don't answer to the parents, we answer to our students. And if we are going to let the fear and pressure succumb to it because of the parents, we're not doing our jobs. Is it easy? No. But you want to know something? I mean, there's so many different ways now that we can get parents on board. And a lot of it really is that educational outreach to explain to them what we're going to do. Modeling effective practices, sharing student work. Ever since we start, I get more parent calls now about why I didn't put that up on Facebook about their kid doing something good than I do anything negative. And, but I'll tell you right now, education is good for one thing. It's good for making excuses not to move forward.
Amen.
And when I look at administrators like that, oh, the parents, I don't have the time. It's something else I have to do. Oh, my God, the learning curve. You know, we need to be in the profession of finding solutions instead of just being so damn good at generating excuses. And those leaders have to understand that, if the parents aren't complaining about one thing, they're going to complain about something else. Is the battle worth fighting? And in this case, if they don't fight it, you as a leader and a school run the risk of becoming more and more irrelevant and less meaningful to your students, and that is not the key to increasing student achievement. If your kids don't want to come to school, if your parents don't give a darn what's going on in your school, again, you have to be willing to develop a tough skin. Leadership is about a tough skin. You're not there to make everybody happy. That's one thing I learned. I want to make everyone happy. Now, I want to make my students happy. I want to make my staff happy. And hopefully by doing that, it translates into parent happiness.
Eric, I have another question too. Going back to my particular district, one of the things too that we fight against is, we're successful. Why change what we're doing? We already have high test scores. We already are successful. We're in an affluent area. Why should we do anything different?
My kids go to that school.
Yeah, it's really difficult that's difficult to get people to move forward. We're talking all the way from the top down. We have a phenomenal superintendent now, but it's difficult.
Well, it really depends on how you define success. If success is a test score, all one has to do is look at the latest PISA results. Now, when you look at the PISA results, you look at you always see the top countries. All right, Shanghai, China, whatever, they're all at the top. Well, this year they ran another test against that one called the happiness test. And they found that with the countries that had the highest achievement were the least happy. So, are you preparing testing zombies that really are not going to have the skill sets to succeed in the real world? If you want to hang your hat on that, go ahead. You want to know something? Standardized test scores and how many districts define achievement is not what the real world demands. And you want to know something? I'm a little miffed at why we discount trades such as plumbing, electrician, all of these carpenters, professions that we are always going to need, don't count in the environment you describe. And I'm sorry, it's not a knock on your district, but it really comes down to how do we define success? And I think success can be defined in many ways. But until we get away from just looking at the test result, all of our kids shouldn't have to go to college if they don't want to. But again, it all comes down to conditioning. We've done such a great job. Our education system has conditioned educators and parents alike to have an expectation as to what achievement really is. Achievement is not a test score. It's a student being able to accomplish something that they thought they couldn't. It's being a student being able to express what they've learned in a variety of ways that you cannot put a number on. It's having students feel good about themselves and be confident when they graduate to go into the world and make a difference. You cannot put a number on driving change, changing minds, engaging in conversations that ultimately are going to drive action. You can't put a price on that. So those are the things that we really should be looking at, and don't.
Well, Kimberly Go wants to know, what are some ways administrators and teachers can find more time in their day to educate themselves on digital leadership? Because, yes, time is always going to be the top excuse, isn't it?
Oh, you know what? We've all used the time excuse. We're all guilty. And you know what? Again, it takes looking at time from a different perspective. We all have time in our days. It is how we spend our time that truly matters. If we value something, we will make the time. instead of finding the time. You know, if I need to find the time to work out when I go away, guess what? It never happens. But when I make the time and get up consistently at 4:30 in the morning when I'm home, I get the result that I want. So, you know, one, we need to make the time. And number two, as leaders, we need to create time for our staff. Now, we did that at New Milford High School because the time excuse was running rampant. Everyone's like, oh, Eric, this PLN stuff, connected learning, it sounds so great, but why can't we have a job-embedded model like the real world? Well, this is school, for one. It's the opposite of the real world. No, I basically said, okay, there's the excuse time. What can I do? So I looked for an area of opportunity. And at my school, we run a traditional 8-period day. All teachers teach 5 classes. They have a prep, a duty, and a lunch. We cut all their contractual duties in half, freeing them up 2 to 3 48-minute periods per week.
Wow.
Instead of sitting in cafeteria, in the halls, in school suspension, they now have those 2 to 3 periods, depending on the semester, to use to learn about whatever drives them. Whatever they're passionate about, they can learn about it. They create learning portfolios that are connected to their end-of-the-year evaluation. Because you want to know something? If you get to call the shots to your learning, it becomes fun, you become driven, and you do it. So that is how we have taken advantage of time in our school. And you know what? You have to look at your individual schools and find ways to make it work. Solutions instead of excuses. Now, my vice principal doesn't like me very much because in theory, doing this sounds great. In practice, there are some difficulties. Who's going to man the duties? Well, it's my vice principal, my athletic director, and me. Why do we do that? Because we want our teachers to see that we value their time. We sit in the cafeteria. Well, lately, my vice principal's been sitting there more than me. But we do that. We're the ones visible in the halls because we want them to see that their time to learn is valuable. That's how we do it.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And the good news is you didn't say it's in the book.
But it is.
It is. And I was like, as you were doing it, I was like, is he going to say it? Because it's that's totally in the book.
No more.
So I have a random question for you, and the girls are going to laugh when I say this. You have a Pinterest. And one, I know, and I'm not a fan of Pinterest, and I want to know why. You are the Twitter educator, so I want to know why you have a Pinterest. That's all.
Well, every tool has its value, and I'm a visual learner, and I really like the ability to visually curate resources. And what I found, too, with Pinterest is I didn't know how wildly popular the Pinterest was going to be. And I'm still amazed that so many people follow me on Pinterest. But it's a great way to share boards of information on topics. I mean, that's why I like it. I like it better than Delicious and Digo. It just fulfills a need for me. And I could be on a site, and I can easily just use the pinning Google Chrome extension, and it's done. I mean, I love it. I mean, I'm not into the recipes and destinations like my wife and probably some other people of the opposite sex. But, you know, it's just another tool that helps me do what I do better.
Kat, are you coming over?
Yeah, are you crossing over, Kat?
Yeah.
Do you feel it a little bit more?
Yeah, Kat, I have to say that was probably one of the best guests ever for you. Just to
Maybe. It started with Lisa Dabbs, and now it's kind of culminated here. I may be doing it, especially like how you talked about being a visual learner, and it brings up a lot of good points about how a lot of these ways that we're connected kind of do hit on multiple ways of learning. Which,
you get to share one board on one topic that has so many different choices and options and resources. I mean, it's great. You know, I mean, I don't even know how many Pinterest boards I have at this point. But you know, when I see something from Minecraft, I really pin it for my son. And when I see stuff for Twitter, I do that really for aspiring digital leaders so they can learn how to do it. I did one on my book just to try to curate everything that has been out there. So I mean, there's so many ways you can use it professionally, but you can also use it personally if you so choose.
Well, I found out why you have so many Pinterest followers. Peggy George is sharing your Pinterest page everywhere she goes.
Tell Peggy,
yeah.
Is fail.
Yeah, so it could be Peggy's fault. But Vicki Day wants you to talk about branding and pushing out the positive in your school. I know you have the Brand Ed chapter in your book that we really like, and so Vicki wants you to talk a little bit about what that branding message is.
Branding's interesting. I was introduced to that concept late in 2009, which again it was very new to me, and it was not being spoken about in education circles. A business maven in New York City, her name's Trish Rubin, she's actually featured in my book, saw me on CBS News, the first piece that was ever done in November 2009 on Twitter, and she goes, she just sends me this email. It was really weird. It was like a stalking type of email, and Trish and I are really good friends. And I told her this. It was like a stalking email. She's like, oh, my God, making comparisons to Mad Men and Madison Avenue. I'm like, what the heck is she talking about? But she started talking about this Brand Ed and how I was creating a brand presence for the school. And I didn't even know I was doing it. But here's the bottom line. When you communicate with social media and you use it for public relations, you create a brand presence. The brand presence is you're not really trying to incorporate a business model. What you're trying to do is create a presence for your school, the vision, the values, the mission that resonates with your stakeholders, that compels them to not rely on perception of what goes on, but more or less reality. So a brand presence, when we're doing all this work in social spaces, should send a message like any great brand. What do you want? What do your stakeholders value? Increases in student achievement, innovation, different extracurricular activities, staff accomplishments, all this great stuff that encapsulates our schools, our brand presence through our logos, our names, our colors, being consistent in social spaces should really send a message about all the positive work we're doing. Why? Because we want the public to support the work that we're doing. A great brand attracts consumers. We want to attract our stakeholders, and we want them to partner with us as we work together to create the best school systems possible for our kids.
So if you had, let's say, a teacher on staff who herself or himself had already kind of their own brand, right? Would you feel threatened by that teacher? I mean, that teacher is perhaps also, really heavily on Twitter, really doing all this kind of stuff, but it's not like the handle, their Twitter handle is not, this school so-and-so or Mrs. so-and-so, like it's not particularly aligned to that school. Do you have a policy for that, or is that okay? Do you embrace that kind of approach?
We don't have many policies.
Oh, it's nice.
I embrace that. I would think it's awesome. I mean, I have people like that. My media specialist, Laura Fleming, if you're not following her, she's at NMHS_LMS. She is her own person, and we sort of relish that. I mean, I'm not here to tell people to conform because I hate it when other people tell me to conform. I do what's best for kids. I'm my own person. Get out of my way and let me do my job. So for me, listen, as long as their presence is ultimately supporting the shared vision that we have in moving our school forward, I don't care. And I'll be the first one. Our district has standardized Twitter accounts for all the schools. Guess who the only one that is that doesn't? Oops.
Oh, awesome. That just made my day. Thank you.
But I was also not asked to change it over.
Huh.
Because I've created my own identity for me. It obviously aligns with the district. I mean, it's all NMHS this, NMHS that. pictures of the school. I mean, I don't hide from it, but it's and again, they made one for me too, and I actually have followers on that account. And, I've never sent a tweet out, which is weird. But no, I mean, I think the beauty of just being human is that we all have our own identities, and it's how can our own identities add value and strengthen the culture that we're trying to put in place. So when teachers get on, I don't care what their Twitter name is. I don't care when they tweet. I don't care how they tweet. I just tell them, don't be stupid online, and it's worked so far.
That's awesome.
I'm just taking that in. You got to give me a second, y'all.
No, I was also trying to do the Q&A. Peggy George says that Laura also does a lot of great things with digital badging.
Oh yeah, she's an innovator. I mean, she created our own digital badge platform to acknowledge informal learning.
That's amazing.
Teachers now earn digital badges on their own time. They watch a screencast, and they basically demonstrate the tool in action, all aligned to the Common Core, Iste Nets, and the framework for the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. When they do that, they get a digital badge and a digital portfolio, and now they actually print them out on paper and put them on their doors to show them.
Brilliant. That is brilliant.
Love it.
But that segues into what digital leadership is all about. Digital leadership is about giving your staff autonomy, removing the fear of failure, supporting them, letting them take calculated risks, modeling so that they can go and be the change that we wish to see in education. I didn't teach Laura how to do any of this stuff. All she was given was the autonomy to just basically, when I hired her after I stole her from another district, it's simple. I go, don't suck and do some great things. And I gave her some general parameters, and she has so exceeded any expectation we could possibly have. She's just churning out initiative after initiative, and it's finding the right people that embrace the same vision and getting out of their way. She gets my support when she needs it, and she knows it. But all the staff get that same support, and we have staff doing incredible work because they know that I'm not going to harp on them about Park, about Common Core, because you know what? If you're good teaching, we'll address all of that. And it's all about creating a learning environment that addresses those essential skill sets, critical thinking, problem solving, all that stuff, and the rest falls into place. But if you take the digital component out, it's kind of hard to do digital badges, maker spaces, and create your own 3D virtual reality learning environments with your own unique platform. It's kind of hard to do that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
I just had a thought and it totally just disappeared in my head. You guys go ahead. I'm getting overwhelmed by the awesomeness.
Well, do you guys think that possibly we should start in on our hot topics for the evening, since we're getting towards the end of our time?
Oh, we are. Gosh, time flies.
Time does fly when we're having fun. And Eric, I have so enjoyed this conversation and your thoughts and perspectives on teaching and learning.
I just make it up
really
as I go.
nice.
I wish I had a better answer for that.
Well, Jamie had a question back in our script about scholarly.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I forgot about that. See, I get all caught up in the Q&A, and I can't come straight to my questions. Yep. But I've stayed on top of that, y'all. I'm so proud of myself. Yeah. Well, one thing Kat and I have talked a lot about, especially Kat is approaching her dissertation stage of the doctoral program. And I'm in the depths of my EDS program, as you know, because I interviewed you for the influential leader that you are for that program. So we've talked a lot about the difference in blogging and scholarly contributions. And I really think that your book, in my mind, really somewhat blurs those two ideas between the scholarly aspect and the practitioner aspect. I think that you bring in a lot of really good research and a lot of really great ideas that have something behind them. But I think you also bring in a lot of really great, hey, this is happening in my school experience. So what value do you see in that balance between that practitioner and that scholarly aspect of growth for leaders?
Well, I was going to say something, and it would have just been very inappropriate
No.
about
No.
pieces, but I'm going to refrain. I think
That's going to be the after show.
scholarly work sets the context.
Yep.
But you want to know something? A lot of it's based on theory. And I think we deserve practical examples from educators that are actually working in the trenches, that are initiating change and making things happen. You know, it's great to say you should do this, this, and this based on this, but that's not how the real world works. It's not how education works.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I kind of chuckle now because, you know, I was speaking to a professor over the weekend, and we were talking about blogging versus scholarly work. And you know what it came down to? Basically, she said, well, no one reads the scholarly work.
That's so true. Well, because it's so hard to publish.
But not just that, but that's why I'm like, well, you know, a blog, you know, we were talking about, does a blog devalue it? No. You know, you get to add your opinion, then you can point people to your scholarly work, but people don't want to read it.
That's right.
Unless they're in a doctoral program.
We're forced to do it.
But, you know,
That's right. I see white paper, and I'm like, no.
It has its place, but you know what I love about, you know, digital leadership is how social media has connected me to the scholars themselves.
Yes.
And I can have a conversation with them like we are now. One of my best BFF scholars is Andy Hargraves. You know, I remember when I met Andy and he was just getting started on Twitter. We talked about it, and now we have conversations all the time. I mean, and he is all about scholarly work. And then my boy Michael Fullen. You know, Michael and I have had dinner now twice. I don't know why I was invited both those times. And, you know, then you get to talk to the scholars themselves. They talk about your work, and that's what makes it real. But for me, I kind of want to read what my peers are doing. I want to see what the practitioners are doing because that's real. And it doesn't have to be based on scholarly work to actually have a positive impact. And I think that's why you're seeing so many more educators that have found their voice that are publishing. You know, I would have my goal was to go get my doctorate. I was gonna do it. I was all set because that's what I thought I had to do. But now, once I like writing books, and you know, for me at least, it's I don't know. It's amazing that people actually want me to write books and beg me to write books, which is crazy. But it's all about perspective and what you're looking to get out of it. And you know, I wish I could make the time to get a doctorate. I just can't find any more time in my day to do that.
Okay, so now we really, really have to do hot topics.
I love Amy keeping us on track.
Sorry.
I love it.
Usually I'm the one that's like spaced out in my own.
You're doing great.
Okay, who wants to start hot topics? Eric, do you have anything hot to talk about?
Other than what you've already been talking about.
I know, right?
It's all been a hot topic.
I've got enough talk. I got a lot of hot topics. Well, we talked about it. We talked about digital badges. I talked a little bit about virtual learning environments.
You have had a lot of hot topics. I'm not discounting that at all. Just as our guest, I was going to give you the first opportunity.
Let's let Kat go, because I think I like Kat's hot topic.
Oh,
well, it's kind of funny that we're starting with that, considering how we just ended talking about how practitioner and scholar that combination is kind of difficult. And Eric, that's actually something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm trying to bridge that gap where you have the practitioner experience and the scholarly research. And I just accepted a new position at Georgia Gwinnett College, not teaching. I'm actually in the Center for Teaching Excellence as their educational technology coordinator. So I'm hoping, I know as a classroom teacher, hopping up to higher ed like that's kind of rare. So I'm hoping that I can impact the educators in higher ed, who are especially the leaders in higher ed, who are often disconnected from exactly all this that's happening in the K-12 world. So I'd like to bridge that gap somehow. So yay.
Yeah, and if you could figure out down the road why, you know, I firmly believe that higher ed should accept a book manuscript as doctoral work.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm working on my next book, so if you can find a university that'll accept that as my dissertation, I'll be very, very happy.
I will let you know the moment I hear anything. They're getting there slowly.
Yeah, I actually reached out to young Zhao and tried to get him to take me on, and apparently they don't have an online component yet at Oregon, but I'll find some way to get it done.
I saw him in Washington.
An online component.
Fantastic.
So that's kind of my big news. Anybody else?
Daisha, go for it.
I was just going to talk about iSummit, which is coming up next week. I know some folks, like in the northern part of the country, will be still in school, but iSummit conference is a great conference for schools who are considering going one-to-one or who are one-to-one. And Jamie's going to be a workshop presenter on Tuesday talking about iPads. Angela Myers is going to be our keynote speaker, and this Wednesday and Thursday we still have spots available, so check it out, isummitconference.com.
Hey, I know a great keynoter for next year if you need a recommendation.
Hey, I think so, and I got a personal connection, huh? I will put that word in, Eric. We'd love to have you.
Thanks.
Well, mine's boring, but I mean, I tweeted it, and I don't think that people will read what I tweet, so I figured I'd say it. This is just for teachers, for those or parents, perhaps. 10 Marks, which is just an Amazon company, but is also a math program, is actually doing their summer school program for free for students, which is like I think $40 value or something like that. So if you are a teacher, it'd be great to push it out to your families. If you are a parent that's looking to, add to the work, not necessarily workload, but get the students kind of working on some things this summer, check out 10 Marks, because that's a great value to have a free opportunity for kids to be working on some skills that might hinder that slump a little bit coming into the fall.
Okay, so I have too many. But that's because I was a little bit Apple geeked out today. But before I get Apple geeked out, the little bits, kits, the little magnetic bits that you put together and build things, little electric modules.
Little bits?
Little bits, yes, which are so super cool. They now have collections for classrooms, so you don't have to buy just the small kits. You can get a big kit for a classroom. And I think like the medium-sized one is just $9.99, which is totally doable. There's a grant that we just got from, or that we didn't get, but one of my teachers is applying for me this summer. Anyway, it's such a doable price, and I think like the big kit is maybe $3,000, but just fantastic. And I will tweet out that link in a minute. Mm-hmm. I can only do so much at once, but I'll just do an EduVue on that, and then maybe you guys can modify it for me. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then, my Apple geekiness, I came home this afternoon after a day with my family and turned on the Worldwide Developer Conference, keynote, because what else does an Apple fangirl do? And just two things that I pulled out of there. Number one, is the new iOS X, which will be Yosemite. You can make phone calls from your Mac and answer phone calls from your Mac, which I think is a fun feature. Just if your phone is someplace in the house, it could be on the other side of the house, and it rings, but it's on the charger and you've got it on silent because you can't hear it, but you'll get a little notification pop up and bloop. Yay. And then the other one has to do with your phone, and that is that messages will now have a swipe to talk portion of the program. They're not trying to put our friends at Voxer out of business, but that's one of the things that we've been doing all along with Voxer. Well, Apple has taken that feature, and they now have it. So you can do videos, pictures, text, and audio now in messages. So those are just two things that I pulled out, two things that I was pretty excited about when I was watching.
Mm-hmm. They're just trying to catch up with Android, right?
Yes, they are.
That's actually
a lot of features.
Tim Cook put it all. Tim Cook actually said, no.
Uh-oh. No, gosh.
Here we go. And I wanted to just mention too, Ed Camp Fayette. I know Eric mentioned earlier Ed Camps. I know that's something that I am very passionate about that we're doing this summer for teachers within my district, but all teachers within the metro Atlanta area are welcome to attend. I've had to open up 100 more tickets. Woo! I had totally sold everything else. I've opened 100 more tickets. So, and also we have so many wonderful sponsors. IPVO is sending 2 document cameras for me to give away. Voxer, you name it. I mean, it's just been, everybody has been so supportive on Twitter. So I'm really excited. I'm going to tweet that s'more flyer back out.
Yay!
All right, guys. Well, we've hit 9:45. So, Eric, before you go, please tell us where you're going to be in the near future and how people can find you, follow you, and/or contact you.
Yeah. Where am I going to be?
Good question, right?
The website. Go to the website.
Yeah, go to my website. I'm going to lots of places. It's pretty cool. I mean, I love sharing the work that we're doing in Milford High School. My students, my staff, I mean, they're amazing. I'm going to start working in one of my student presentations into my messages because she just rocks. So Sarah Almeida, I know you're probably not watching this, but a shout out to you. You know, the best way to find out what's going on with me is ericsheninger.com.
Well, wonderful. Yes, good question.
Yeah, it's ironic. It was no up until today.
Oh, wow.
And now I might be coming at the request of Scholastic. So the wife has given me the thumbs up. I just see, because I'm going the next 3 straight days. That Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm in 3 different places. So if I come, it's just for Sunday and the Monday.
All right, we'll find you.
Definitely. And also, well, speaking of Iste, our topic for next week is the Iste Show, where EduVue is welcoming you to Atlanta. So we're going to talk about our city and this amazing professional opportunity to learn, network, and grow. We'll talk about some of the presentations that we've kind of found to be interesting and what our own schedules are going to look like.
You guys should do a live show from Iste. That would be cool.
Jamie, what did I say?
Jason said that, and I was like, oh, that would be nerve-wracking. But it would be.
Stream. I mean, come on, you know?
Yeah. We might try
the pressure.
We might. Well, thanks, Eric. We are so glad to have you on. We're excited, but we love your book, and we're gonna keep. I think there's nobody that's reading your book who's not saying to tell 4 other people to go get your book. And everyone who's reading it, we can think of about 10 people we'd like to drop it on their desk for.
Yes.
So,
minimum.
Yeah. Start going in the one who's failing.
The Kindle version. The Kindle version's cheap. Send it to them. Send them an Amazon gift card.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Eric, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No problem, ladies. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And thanks to our guests for joining us. Please continue the conversation. You'll be able to watch this show soon on our EdReach Network channel and our YouTube channel. And you can listen to us by subscribing to our podcast on iTunes.
Don't forget to follow us at EduVue on Twitter. And be sure to follow the EdReach Network as well at EdReach. And we will see you next Monday night at 8:45 talking Iste. Night, y'all.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.